So today, the online students, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Is the board visible to you?
Yes, sir.
We'll be starting with a Marxian interpretation of population growth. Now, before studying the Marxian interpretation of population growth, so we'll study, okay, what is the Marxian theory? So nowadays in the popular media, okay, since the past 2 years, you must be hearing something called as the woke culture. Or come across this word? It's so woke, okay? Like Trump will be saying, okay, all this woke politics are irrelevant, redundant, something of that sort. Okay. So let's see, how this word woke is associated with Marxism or Marxian theory. Okay. And I'll tell you something, which is like a beyond the textbooks. Okay. How is the Marxism related to the other aspects of the society also? Okay. How it is associated with others. So usually, this is not there in, textbooks, which you read, but you can always have an application of the Marxian culture. It's also called as Western Marxism. So Marx has given an economic theory. So let's see what is the economic theory of Marx. So Marx will be starting with society, a primitive society. This is also called as a tribal society. For this part now, you take down the running notes here. Okay, I'll not be dictating this part. So he'll be starting with a primitive society or a tribal society. Now, in a primitive society or a tribal society, now if you look at the material wealth, so to whom the material wealth will be belonging to? During this time period, you should also talk about the economy. So what kind of economy you had? You had a barter exchange. So whatever goods you are able to, you're not producing exactly. So whatever goods you're able to accumulate, right, or gather, you are bartering. Okay, it's undergoing exchange. Now here, what are the means of the production? Nature, right? For example, forest. But to whom the forest belong to? Everyone. Okay. So everyone was the owner. So the material wealth belonged to everyone. Or can we say it belonged to community? For example, you have a forest. In that forest, you'll be having a particular community or a particular tribe. So to that community or to that tribe, the material wealth belonged to. So let's call it the ancient time period. Now comes the medieval times. So during the medieval time, we have the feudal lords. Under feudal lords, the peasants used to work, right? Now, during this time period, if you're talking about the material wealth, to whom the material wealth belonged, what is the means of production during the medieval times? Here, the means of production is land. And the land belonged to feudal lords. So did any kind of such system existed in India or it is still existing in India? Zamindari system in India is very similar, right? So after the medieval times, now here we are talking about the Europe. So in Europe, you had the Industrial Revolution. Now after the Industrial Revolution, so there was enclavization. Basically most of the people were there in rural areas, right? Then, okay, the urban areas did not have much of population. So in order to encourage labor in the urban areas, what has been done? Enclavization has been done. That is, the rural landlords, feudal lords which are there, they were thrown away all these peasants who were there. Okay, because there also kind of a legislation has come which is very similar to land reforms in India, where they say that if a peasant is stealing the land will be belonging to the peasants. And what these people have done, the feudal lords, they have made enclaves out of their lands. So because of which the peasants, they were thrown out of the land. So where these peasants will end up now? They'll be ending up in the urban areas. And in the urban areas, during that time period, the factories were also growing. Okay. And factories have gradually become industries. By the way, what is the difference between a factory and an industry? If you have done world history, the factory is a small setup. Okay. So the factory can be at your home also. So all the household members are contributing in the production. So that becomes a factory. If your household members, if your neighbors are also contributing, still that's a factory. But industry is a very large setup. So this factory system has gradually become the industrial setup. So after the Industrial Revolution, okay, then you had a capitalist society. So in a capitalist society, so whosoever contributes the capital, they become the capitalists. So whosoever is setting up the factory, they become the capitalists, right? So to whom all the factors of the production is belonging to? What are the various factors of production here? Capital, land, machinery, including labor. Labor is also a factor of production here. So we have to keep this point in mind. Labor is also a factor of production. Okay. To whom all these factors of production belongs to? Capitalist. Capitalist. Okay. So here there was a kind of a conflict or a relation, we can say, between the feudal lords and peasants. In a capitalist society, there is a relationship between a capitalist and a worker. Now, Marx will be coming up with one more theory. He will be saying that the people will be accumulating what they are good at. A capitalist is good at accumulating the capital. Okay. So that's why they will keep on reducing the wages. Now, the workers, what they earn, they'll be earning wages. So since they are good at earning the wages, they'll keep on accumulating the wages. So from this principle of Marx, we'll be deriving the theory of population. Now let's see what happens here. So now we'll be extrapolating this, we'll be elaborating this a bit. Now you have a capitalist. A capitalist, what they will do? They want to increase the capital, they want to increase the money, they want to maximize the profit. So they want to maximize profit. In order to maximize the profit, they will, what they will do? They will introduce the machinery. They'll introduce machines. So when they will be introducing machines, so what will happen to the demand for labor? So demand for labor will reduce. Therefore, what will happen to the wages of the labor? The wages of the labor will decrease. For example, in a household, you're having 5 members. All the 5 members, including the children, will be going for work. So they'll be getting 5x of wage. Okay. So the wages will be decreasing. The family will get less income. The family will get less wages. Now, what this labor class is good at? They're good at accumulating the wages. Now, how they will increase the wages? They'll produce more children. So they believe in the principle of more hands, more work, therefore more income or more wages. So this is where the population increases. Population increases. Now next. When the population is increasing, what will happen to the supply of labor? Supply of labor will increase. When the supply of labor increases, demand for labor reduces. Therefore, what will happen to wages again? Wages will reduce again. When the wages will reduce, again what will happen? Again they will produce more children. So this is the economic theory which is given by Marx, and from this we are deriving the population theory of Marx. Now let's come back to the economic theory of Marx. Okay. So this is our interpretation of the population theory from Marxian economic theory. We're coming back to this. So in a capitalist society, he has divided them into two classes. Marx has divided them into two classes. That is, you had a capitalist class and he had a labor class or a worker class. So before this, again, there were two classes, feudal lord and a peasant. And before this, the primitive society, it was classless society. Okay, there was no division in the society at all. There is no rich poor. There is no haves and have-nots. Now he called this capital class as bourgeois class. He called this worker class as proletariat. Bourgeois and proletariat. These are the French terms. Now, Marx will be saying that the capitalist society is inherently flawed. Okay, it has got inherent contradiction. Why? A capitalist will go on accumulating the capital, they'll become rich and richer. And the worker, the proletariat class, will go on becoming poorer and poorer. Okay. Say they're becoming very poor, extremely poor, they're unable to afford good food also. Will they have energy? No. They will become sick very frequently. Okay. They'll be prone to famines. Okay. They'll be prone to diseases, malnutrition. Will they be able to work in the factories again? No. Now, at that time, okay, so much of skill is not required in the factories. Now let's come to this stage now. Okay, the present world. So you have the capitalist and the labor, right? If the labor is poor, do you think labor will be able to afford education? Will they be getting any skills? No. If they are skillless, if they don't have education, don't you think, okay, from where the labor supplied to the factories will be coming, or the labor supplied to the industries will be coming? From where the Google, Facebook, Meta, okay, from where these no this okay corporations will be getting the labor from? Outside the okay. Say let's divide this entire world into two classes. Okay, we're saying that these inherent contradictions, they'll become extremely poor. So one day they will not be getting food at all. Okay. So when they'll be suffering from hunger, that is the day when they'll be revolting. So they will revolt and they will overthrow this class structure. They will destroy all the factories. They will go and ransack the capitalist houses. Recently, you must have seen some of the scenes in Sri Lanka. What they have done, they went to the presidential palace. Okay, they have ransacked the entire palace. Right. Okay. And recently, similar such scenario was visible in this Israel also, when Benjamin Netanyahu, when he was about to bring a law by which he was subjugating the judiciary. You have seen this Israelis storming the presidential palace. For a while, Benjamin Netanyahu has to hide in Israel itself. Okay. So they will storm and they will overthrow this regime of capitalism. So Marx will be saying that it will be inherently flawed. So ultimately, the proletariat will be taking over. Okay. And the stage at which the proletariat will be taking over, it is called as the communism, where all the resources will be belonging to the community. So here the community will be owning the resources. Community will own the resources. This is called as the communism. But now, in between a capitalist society and a communist society, there will exist a socialist society. A socialist society is a transition. Now you have all the factory workers, right? Say the capitalist regime has been overthrown. After the capitalist regime has been overthrown, suddenly next day you're saying that, okay, from tomorrow onwards, okay, all the laborers of the factory will become the owners of the factory. Do you think they'll be able to manage? Do you think they will have managerial expertise? Do you think they will be able to take care of the accounts? Do you think they'll be able to accumulate the capital and distribute among themselves? But since they don't have the expertise, they won't be able to manage the affairs. That's why in between, who will take care of the resources? It will be state. It is the state which will become the owner of all the resources, with the intention of transmitting the capital to the commune or the community at large. So that state is called as the socialist state. State will be owning all. State will be owning the factories. State will be managing all the affairs. State will be running the schools. State will be running the hospitals. After that, it will be transferred to the community. The community themselves will be managing all the affairs. What will happen to the state? During the communism, the state will wither away. State will wither away. The state will not exist. So everything will be managed by the community only. So that is what the theory of communism is. Example, a classical example of this is, for example, community welfare associations. So you have a society. So who is managing all the affairs of the society? Community itself. Who will be taking the decisions there? The community itself. So they'll be having weekend meetings or somewhere. They'll be come together. They will take the decision. Who are pooling money for the maintenance here? Society itself or the community itself. A group of houses together, they'll be managing all the affairs. As an example of communism. Now let's take the example of
फर्स्ट क्लास का टॉपिक और जो आज का टॉपिक है ना
different है.
हाँ वो व्हाट्सएप पे तो युवा पे वीडियो देखना तो
Okay. मैं काम कर फर्स्ट क्लास सेकंड क्लास एक ही टॉपिक है. आज का आज डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड टॉपिक है.
क्या बोलते हैं
आज को मार्क्सिज्म. Okay, give me a second. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm coming to that only. Yeah. Very good example. Welcome. Yeah. I'll come to that again. So the state will be withering away. It will not be any state, any intermediate will not be there. The community will be, looking after its own affairs. Okay. Now, India is also called as a socialist state, right? Why? Because still very recently, before the advent of the LPG reforms, who is taking care of all day-to-day affairs? State. Okay, till about 90s, the state used to manufacture watches also. You know that? HMT watches, okay, Mysore sandal soap, even though the state manufactures. So starting from soap, watch, iron and steel, fertilizers, everything, the state used to take care of everything. Okay, so that is a feature of this socialist state. But gradually, because when state becomes larger and larger, okay, it's unable to manage all the affairs, so it becomes inefficient. So that is when the private players will be taking part in that. Okay. Now you're talking about the Scandinavian countries, right? Yeah. Okay. There is also one more thing. The criticism is that the socialist countries are more capitalist in nature, and the capitalist countries are more socialistic in nature. Now, how will you judge this? If you look at the social sector spending in these countries, so-called capitalist countries, there the social sector spending of the part of the GDP is very high as compared to the countries like India. We proclaim ourselves as socialist, but we are more capitalist in nature. The outer layer is socialism, but from inside we are capitalism. Take China, for example. China is extremely capitalist. It says that it's a communist state, but if you look at the way in which its economy is functioning, it's completely capitalist in nature, right? If you go to these Nordic countries or any of the Scandinavian countries, even Canada, for example, education and health is completely free, and they get best of the quality education. Even USA, okay, the so-called the propagator of the capitalism. Till this high school, the education is free there, and you look at the quality of the school. These are called as public schools, and most of them will be studying in the public schools only. Okay, recently there has been a survey because recently the number of people who are going from India to abroad has been increasing. Like in 21 it was 1,83,000. So recently it is around 2,50,000. So they're giving up Indian citizenship, and most of them are going to US, Canada, and some of the European countries. Now, if you're calculating, if you're comparing the US education in US and India, okay, if you have to get the same quality education as you get in the public school, the government schools of the US, in India, your income has to be around 83 lakhs per annum. Okay. So now tell me, okay, who is more socialist? In this case, it's US. So except healthcare and rest of the things, whatever taxes you're paying, okay, they have been best utilized. If you go to Scandinavian countries, you just have to pay your tax, like 30%, 40%, it will be going in the taxes. But later on, you don't have to worry at all. So here in India, we'll be paying taxes. So first of all, income tax. The income on which you're earning on the tax is paid. That is, the source itself is deducted, right? Then from that income, if you're going and buying any product again, on that you're paying GST again. When you're buying a car, for example, you already pay road tax. But again, when you're traveling from one place to another, for example, you're traveling from Bangalore to Mysore, again you have to pay toll tax at 2-3 places, right? So we have been taxed very excessively. Now you might be coming up with an argument that in those countries the taxes are very high. Here also, if you're in under certain bracket now, here also taxes are more than 30%. Okay. Now indirect, all if you're including now, like most of your income, like more than 50% is going in taxes only. But ultimately, what facilities you're getting in return? Nothing, zero, right? You're asking something? Huh. State will be the way. Even Marx agreed that communism is an ideal state. Ideal does not exist in reality. So even Marx agrees that we can't achieve this, but we should be trying towards this. This is what Marx has said. It can't be achieved. You see, Marx did not speak much about communism. He did not say. He'll be talking about the problems associated with capitalism. Most of his discussion is here only. So finally, he'll be saying that it should wither away. The capitalist society should wither away. Even if it is not withering away, it will collapse under its own weight. It has got its own problems. There is so much of inequality. The poor people will revolt one day and they will take away all the resources. And this ultimately is going to be achieved. Okay. So here what should be happening is that ultimately all the resources should be belonging to everyone. Okay. Basically, this is kind of the decentralized democracy which we talk about. So when you're talking about the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, what precisely you're talking about? You're talking about this one, where the power, authority, and responsibility will be given to the local self-government. They should be having the power to mobilize their own resources. They should be having the power to tax, and they should be able to manage their own taxes. And this is happening at the village level, right? Or at the hamlet level. A group of houses, that's a community, that's a village. At the village level, things should be happening. So this is the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. And basically, we are moving towards the communism. When we are talking about social audit, we talk about social audit nowadays. You say that, the money which has been spent in the panchayat administrations at the village level, the CAG should not come and audit there, because it becomes very highly inaccessible for the CAG to come and audit. And who will best audit? For example, a fund has been allotted to lay a road in the village. Who is the best person to ask? Gram Sabha should be asked. Okay, whether the road has been laid, how many kilometers of road has been laid, whether it is up to the quality. Okay, if that has been passed by, say, 50 or 60% of the people, or entire Gram Sabha has passed that, then social audit is done. Now, the contractor who is coming and laying the road in the village, don't you think, he will be very much afraid or scared that, the people who will be looking after my work are present here only, they're looking on daily basis, right? The social audit is more effective and it is part of our constitution. Okay, we do it. Okay. So that is also part of the communism. Now, how we can interpret the population theory from communism? Now, earlier, why the population was growing? Earlier, the population was growing because the family was earning less wages. Because who is taking away all the profits? Capitalist. Now, who is the owner now? The workers themselves are the owners. Okay. So do you think they need to, there will be any need to accumulate more wages? No. Therefore, they will not produce more children. Right? So therefore, the population will reduce. It will not increase much. So is it not true? If you look at, let's, profile the various countries of the world, the poor countries and rich countries. And in which countries the population growth is more? Poor countries. In rich countries, the population growth is less. Okay. Take Indian society. Okay. Or let's divide India into north and south. In south, the per capita income is high. Or look at the states where the per capita income is high. There, the population growth rate is less. And the states which have a low per capita income, the population growth is high. Look at the communities also. The communities, or the families who are poor, they have more children. Rich families, they have less children. So this is the Marxian theory, or Marxian, interpretation of the population is applicable to the world level. It is applicable within India. It is also applicable among the families also. It is very much true. Now here, Marx is coming up with a solution. What Marx is saying, if the population has to be reduced, then welfare is important. That is what we are following nowadays also, right? If you want to reduce the population, or if you want to reduce the population related problems, state has to invest more in health and education. And state investing in health and education is a part of socialistic principle, isn't it? Now, one more word which will be coming across here is this. The Marx will be talking about the material dialecticalism or dialectical materialism. Means, if you look across the various societies or various economic models, there is always a tussle. There is always a dialogue. There is always a conflict between one class and other class. Okay. And this conflict, this dialogue is for what? Material wealth or the factors of production. That's why Marx will be using the word called as dialectical materialism. And second, Marx also uses one more word called as the structural functional approach. Now let's see what is the structural functional approach. For example, you have a bottle here, water bottle. Not this bottle exactly. Show me the water bottles. Okay, not this one also. Okay. So give me that one. Yeah. Now look at this water bottle and look at this water bottle. So this water bottle, it has a very big mouth. It has got certain structure. Okay. Now it has a very big opening. Okay, that's a part of its structure. Do you think, does it really have a function? Because your mouth is small. Look at this water bottle. Look at the structure on the top. It has a narrow opening so that you can sip or drink water very easily. So this structure has got a function. And we're looking at, few more water bottles. I don't have this. So where here at the middle now, okay, the width will be less. You have that anyone? Okay, yeah. Now look at the structure of this water bottle now. Okay, it is slender in the middle. So what is the function of this structure? So that you can hold very easily. Will you be able to hold it that easily? Will you have a grip? No. So for this water bottle, you'll be having a grip. So this structure has got a function. And this is called as structural functional approach. So Marx said, there are various structural functional theories. So they'll be saying that every structure in the society has got a function. So every structure in the society has got a function. Okay. If you're having this structure, it has got certain function. In a feudal society, it's structure of the society, it has got a function. In a capitalist society, it's a structure, function. The capitalist is providing with the capital, the workers are working, and they are helping in the means of production. So this is also called as the structural functional approach. Okay. So this is the theory of Marx and the interpretation of population. Let's write down a little bit, and later on I'll discuss the extrapolation of Marx, how we can apply Marx to other aspects. Means he's saying that every structure in the society has got certain function. Okay, here whichever structure you have, it has got certain function. It's called a structural functional approach. Means the society, nothing will be existing, okay, if it doesn't have a function. One more classic example I'll tell you. Do you think slums should be there or they should not be there? Slums. Slum is a structure, right? They should be there, they should not be there. It shouldn't be there. Okay, our common sense will say that it shouldn't be there. Now let's take the city of Chandigarh, for example. In Chandigarh, the planning is done in such a way that the plotting is done in such a way that in the entire city of Chandigarh, you'll not have a single space for this working class or this slum. That's why the people of the Chandigarh, they have to struggle a lot to get a worker. It's very difficult for them to get a worker. The household help, for example, or for cleaning cars, or for doing menial jobs. They have to come from nearby Mohali or Panchkula, where there are certain slums. Now, if you're not integrating the poor people as a part of your city planning, then you will suffer. Okay. So some will be saying that the slums are part of your structure. If you go to Bombay, okay, you'll be seeing a posh building, okay, group of buildings, and surrounding that you'll have all slum. Like you'll not be having a sea view over there. You'll be having slum view apartments everywhere. Right? The slums building, it's part of the structure. And don't you think this structure does not have any function? Function? This is what structural functional approach is. So every structure has got a function in the society. Okay. So if a structure is being developed, that means there is a function to it. For example, you take some illegal activities which are happening. It's also kind of a structure. Don't you think it does not have any function? It has a function. For example, you take movies which you see in 70s and 80s movies you see. Okay. The most of these movies are based on what? Either poverty or a hero who is a laborer in the factory. He'll be fighting against the capitalists, right? Or it's the movies are more about smuggling gangs. Now, why these smuggling gangs, okay, have developed, okay, a lot in the period of 70s and 80s? Because there were a lot of, trade barriers. India did not have a free trade, and there was demand for the goods in India. For example, at that time, even if you want to get a tape recorder, you can't get it that easily. Even if you want to get a chocolate or a shoe, you can't get that easily. Because India was kind of acting like a closed economy. It was not doing free trade because we wanted to go for self-sufficiency. We thought that, everything what the Indians will be requiring will be producing it locally. Is it possible? No. So demand is there. For the demand to be fulfilled, the structure will develop. The structure is that, okay, the criminal gangs, the smuggling gangs. What is the function? Illegally, they'll be getting all the goods into India. And that has gradually given rise to mafia. Because see, what happens is that, whenever you're giving a little bit of scope to any kind of this illegal activities, say some goods are coming, the be it, say some kind of shoes are coming from somewhere, or tape recorders are coming, or VCRs are coming. So a smuggler will find it more profitable. Okay. So along with this, they'll also get some guns inside. Right? Along with those, anyways, the goods are going. What the other person, say Pakistan, for example, they are supplying all these goods because there is no rule of law there. So when they'll be supplying, what they'll be saying, anyways, the VCRs are going, why don't you take some guns along with them? Why don't you take some counterfeit currency along with it? Why don't you take some drugs along with it? Why don't you take some people along with it? So this will all lead to trafficking, illegal gun trade, okay, and what drug trade. It will lead to all the other associated activities. So this is structural functional approach. Understand? So let's start with this. I hope you have written all this right. So online students, any doubts?
No, sir, all clear.
No. This structural functional theory is all those theories which believe that if there is a structure, it will have a function. And if a function emerges, the structure will also emerge. Okay. So these kind of things now you'll be studying more in sociology or social issues. But Marxist theory is also a structural functional theory. That's it. So as far as a geography, only this word is important. The more Antonio Gramsci, etc., you'll be studying in sociology. I know. See, we will study the Malthusian theory of population growth later on. And whenever you're talking about the Marxian theory, we'll also talk about the Malthusian theory, because both are in contrast with each other. Now, Marx is blaming whom for the rise in the population? Capitalist class. He's saying that this capitalist class, because of the greed for money, because of the tendency to accumulate the capital, they're making the people poor and poor. So that is where the poor people don't have any choice, but they will increase the population. He's blaming the rich. Okay. The structure called as the capitalism itself for increasing the population. But if we're talking about Malthus now, Malthus will be looking at the poor people like lumpen proletariat. Again, I'm using the Marxian language here. He'll be looking them as irrelevant. So he thinks that these poor people, they don't have any work at all. Okay, they're very lazy human beings. All they have, all the work they have is to increase population. All they do is feed and breed. They don't have any work. He speaks as if the poor people should be killed one day. He'll be talking in that language. So he'll be blaming poor for the population increase. That's why whenever you talk about Marx, you should talk about Malthus. And whenever you talk about Malthus, you should be talking about the Malthusian interpretation. Interpretation is in contrast with the Marxist principle. Is in contrast with the Marxist principle, because according to Marx, poverty is a consequence of capitalist exploitation and unequal distribution of resources and unequal distribution of resources. Next point you write. Marxian theory is a theory of economic evolution. Economic evolution. So not a theory of population. Not a theory of population. Change the para. Karl Marx, while studying the processes, and the changes that a society goes through, in its economic transition, he was trying to trace different modes of production that underlie the economy, and how the modes of the production change their forms, and how the ownership of these modes of production change. Change the para. The theory suggests that, I hope all of you are leaving margins while writing the notes. Please leave a margin. Okay. If you're my student, you already know these rules. Are new ones I'm telling you. Okay. Leave the margins. Okay, draw enough margins. Show her. In the para, the theory suggests that capitalism will die on its own. Because of its internal contradictions. And it will be replaced by more equitable economic model, under socialism, and eventually communism. The guys who are attending online, Atul, Sheetal, Ashish, you can please switch on your cameras so that I get to know what you are perceiving. Okay, let's make this class more interactive. Okay, hi Ashish, I'm seeing you after a long time. Hello, next point. Change the para. Acha, Atul, you. Oh,
Sir.
Right. This process is a dialectical process of conflicts, and opposes and the changes are assumed to be progressive in nature. Changes are assumed to be progressive in nature. Now, what do you think? Because nowadays, the word capitalism, okay, is a very dirty word nowadays. Sorry, the word communism is a very dirty word. If you're saying that you support the ideology of communism, you can be tried under section 124A also. Because firstly, it talks about withering away of the state. Okay. And if you take it, this Maoism, Leninism, Stalinism, like all these are derived from, okay, even Naxalism, right? All these are derived from the theory of communism. They also oppose the state. But as a worker, so don't you think you want to be part of the profits here? For example, so such kind of communist ideas also exist in the field of capitalism. How I'll tell you. For example, some companies are there. Okay. So in order to encourage the workers, what they'll be doing? They'll be giving shares to their employees so that they'll contribute more. Okay. So when you're getting a share, okay, in the company, obviously you want to contribute more, you'll be more concerned about the profits, and profits are shared with everyone. It's a theory of communism. Okay. Now, if you look at the government organizations, so all of you want to enter into government organizations. Why? You'll be getting, okay, security is there. You can't be removed from the work very easily, right? You'll be getting a bangla. You'll be getting household help also. Like if an IPS, you'll be getting 4. You'll IAS, you'll be getting 2, right? You'll be getting gadi also. You'll be getting petrol, fuel allowances also. All these things you're getting. Okay. And if at all your health goes bad, okay, in case of any medical emergency, your medical expenses will be paid by the government, right? You have all these facilities. Now here, your employer, which is Government of India, believes that the welfare of the organization lies in the welfare of its workers. So that's why they'll be taking extra care. And it also has been proven that, okay, empirically also it has been proven that if a company is taking care of its employees very well, the company is also grow very fast, right? For example, take Google, for example. You look at the work conditions in Google, okay, they're extremely you won't even feel that it's an office, okay. There is no staircase. If you want to go down, you'll have a slide also for going down, okay. You'll have gym there, you have cafeteria, okay, you'll have lawns, okay, like it doesn't feel like it's office. It believes that if your employee is happy, then the company will also get more profits. So this is a theory which they believe in. Again, it's a theory of communism, okay, which is they're applying. So welfare of the workers, right? Continue further. See, what happened over a period of time is that, see, all these people have revolutionary ideas. Be it Lenin, be it Mao, okay, be it Stalin, okay. They all come from the same theory. But eventually what happens is that, okay, once you get hold of the power, you're not willing to lose the power. Okay. That's why you'll hold to the power forever. So whosoever comes up with the idea of communism, for example, the classic examples in today's world is King Jong-il. Okay. So he calls his country as a communist country. Now he's at the helm of the office, is the head of the country there, head of the government there. So once he's holding all the power, once you get corrupted with power, you won't leave it that easily. So that's why eventually, these now they have become dictatorials or benevolent dictatorship. You can call it them as, okay, a flawed democracy. So that is how they have been turned into. So in case of a Lenin, we can't comment on a Lenin much because, okay, much before he has entered into the stature of war, he died very easily. He had an early death. In the 1925 itself, he has died. So that's why we can't comment much on Lenin, but on others we can comment. The classic example is Stalin. Communist, but again, eventually turned into dictator. All the regimes of North Korea eventually turned into dictators. See, there's so many flavors of socialism again. Yeah. The socialism has got various flavors again. If you're talking about Nehruvian socialism, it's called as Fabian socialism. It's got a different understanding again. Okay. So it is the Nehru who has implemented these capitalistic policies in India again. So we can't completely call him a socialist. He's a Fabian socialist. Okay. Where he wanted to give all the reins of the production to the capitalists. But during at that time, okay, the capitalists of India were not in a power to establish the industries, or they are not able to run all the affairs. So they themselves have asked the state to establish all the basic infrastructure. They have asked the state to establish all the big industries. They said that you establish the big industries, such as iron and steel industries. So the products which are coming from them, we will utilize them and we'll go with the small machinery. We'll do these works and gradually we'll grow. So Nehru himself is, his economic ideology is capitalism. That is when, okay, in 1956, we have come up with this policy, what Nehru, Mahalanobis policy, industrial policy, which has, fully encouraged the capitalism. But who was the owner at the time? State was the owner. It was a state-led capitalism. So there is no one kind of socialism. There are different flavors of socialism. Okay, continue. The theory of the population growth, according to Karl Marx, is a consequence of economic transition. Is a consequence of economic transition. His ideas on population are actually inferred from the theory of communism. Because the population and its demographic indices, reflect the societal nature, social structure, and the social hierarchy. I hope you have drawn this right. You've drawn this right? Okay. The growth of the population, according to Karl Marx, is because of the social structure, and the inequality in a typical capitalist society. That gets differentiated into the haves and have-nots. Haves, have, and have-nots. Change the para. The capitalist model is exploitatory. Where the haves, quote unquote, where the haves use the modes of production, and try to maximize the profits. This is done by introducing the machines. And reducing the labor employment. Change the para. So whenever you're changing the idea, change the paragraph, and please differentiate the paragraphs. At least leave one line gap like that. Yeah. Next point. The labor, on the other hand, are at the receiving end, because of increasing poverty, joblessness, and the exploitation. Therefore, the labor increases. Its assets, quote unquote asset. Labor increases its asset. That is the numbers. Change the para. Marx talks about the natural tendency of the people of what they are good at. Therefore, the bourgeois class or the capitalist class, yes, Bourgeoisie. Geoisie. Therefore, the capitalist class or the bourgeois accumulate the capital or profit, and the labor class accumulates its numbers. Therefore, this results in the population growth. Change the para. So therefore, according to Marx, the growth of the population is because of two reasons. is because of two reasons. A, private property. Property. And B, class differentiation. Now, in order to solve the population problem, he's saying that the problem of population growth is because of these two. So what should happen? What's the solution now? What should disappear? Class should disappear. There should not be any rich and poor. Okay, should be having the same class. And the ownership to the property should also wither away. It will also disappear. That means everyone should be having access to all the resources, right? Therefore, in Marxist ideology, the solution to deal with the population growth and poverty, lies in addressing the twin evils of the society. Lies in addressing the twin evils of the society. That is, encouraging the labor class to take the control of the resources, or the modes of production, and promoting more equitable distribution of resources. Change para. Therefore, now if you're talking about Malthusian, what Malthusian will be saying? Malthus does not say it explicitly, but from his language we can infer that basically he's talking about the removal of the poor people. But what Marx is saying here is asking the poor people to capture the resources. Okay. Now that's why the Malthusian theory and the Marxist theory, they are in contrast with each other. Next, therefore, Marxist thinking was a departure from classical Malthusian approach. Because the Marx, unlike the Malthus, does not blame the poor masses for their poverty and the population growth. Now, if you look at the Marxist theory, now he has written few books. Blame. He'll not be blaming for the poverty. He will be blaming whom? Capitalist. Whereas Malthus will be blaming the poor people. Okay, when you study the theory, you'll understand it better. Now, so precisely if you're talking about, okay, the Marx, 1848, thus capital has come. So let's consider it as 1850s. So the Industrial Revolution has begun in 1750. This is all the phase of the Industrial Revolution. So this was we can consider it as a paradigm. Okay. So if anything becomes too much, of anything become excess, okay, for it antithesis will come. If you're calling this as a thesis, this becomes the antithesis. Okay. The Marxian theory has come as opposition to the existing problems which are prevailing in the society. Okay. So this is where, okay, he'll be talking about the withering away of a state. He'll be talking about the withering away of the class structure in the society. We're talking against the class structure. Now, if you're extrapolating this, so what Marx will be saying here? The Marx is saying that okay. So in a society, there are few people, okay, who have access to resources. We are calling them as haves. And those who do not have access to resources, they are have. Okay, so no access to resources. The Marx is talking in terms of class here. It's talking about class. If I'm extending this, okay, if Marxian theory, okay, if we classify it as a genus, okay, in a genus we'll be having various species. For example, you take cat family, cats, tigers, lions, jaguars, leopards, all this belong to the cat family. Like this, if you are looking at the relevance of the mass in today's society, for example, in India, can we apply to caste? Right? So caste, outcast. Access to resources, no access to resource. So can we apply to gender? Okay. So for example, you're taking the feminist movements in India or elsewhere in the world, feminist movements. Again, the male, okay, non-male, or we can call it as the male non-male. So they had access to resources, and here they did not have access to resources. Okay. It also goes with, okay, for example, even today, if you look at the property ownership in India, it's more with the male, less with the female. If you look at the agricultural property, okay, the most of the agriculture is of women. 70% of the agriculture is done with the women, by the women. But if you look at the ownership of the women, it's less than 2-3%. Again, contact female. Next, queer, right? Heterosexual, other sex, other genders. So they have the access to all the resources, and these people don't have access. They're not even recognized. But nowadays, again, in the world, they have been recognized a little bit. So if you're talking about all these movements now, okay, we can say that they are nothing but the extrapolation of the Marxian theory. Here also, okay, these various, the anti-caste movements in India, or the feminist movements in India and the world, or the queer movements, okay, they all talk about, they all want the access to the resources which they are not availing. So this we can say that, all these, movements in the modern world, okay, they are the extrapolation of the Marxian theory, or we can say that it's an old wine in a new bottle. The basic idea lies the same. That's why all over the world, wherever you see the conservatives, okay, they will not like any such ideas. Because the name itself is a conservative. What do you mean by conservative? Who want to hold upon the older ideas, whatever was existing earlier. Okay, they want to stick to that, those ideas, ideologies. I said then they will never like such kind of a system. So this is an extension of the Marx. That's why Marx will always be relevant. Now, we should not just reduce the Marxian theory to the economist theory. Marx lives everywhere. Okay. So let's do the evaluation of the theory. Evaluation is a departure from the Malthusian ideas. Malthusian ideas. Because if we talk about the Malthusian theory, the Malthus considers the human beings are passive human beings, passive beings. He'll say that these poor people don't have any work. They just feed and they breed. They don't have any work. Just eat and then they breed. Okay. They're very passive. But here, Marx is not considering them as passive. There, Malthus has equated the humans to animals. What do animals also do? Same thing, feeding and breeding. But now, the Marx will be considering humans as the active agents of revolution. He'll say that, the human beings are critical thinkers. They'll bring up a revolution. In fact, he's encouraging the worker class to bring in a revolution. He's not, underestimating the masses here. Where Marx considers the man means humans here, man, as an agent of revolution, That is an active entity, which can change and shape the political and economic destinies. Next point. His model is rooted in dialectical materialism. Of progressive changes. Therefore, Marxian theory is more positive and optimistic. Interpretation of a more egalitarian society. Is possible in the future. See, I'm making this statement in the context of Malthus. What Malthus will be saying, Malthus will be saying that the population is very passive. It only feeds and breeds. As long as it is feeding, it will breed more. Okay, once it is breeding more, okay, you'll have more mouths to feed. Okay, once you are having more mouths to feed, the food decreases. When the food decreases, the population will die. Means he's of the interpretation that so इनका कुछ नहीं होने वाला, ये लोग तो मरेंगे ही ऐसे ही. Okay, they will die just like that. Okay, because they will not get food, and when they will not getting food, they will fight among themselves. You'll have conflicts, you'll have wars. So the society is going to perish. Okay, nothing is going to happen to the society. Now look at the interpretation of the Malthus. He has more pessimistic interpretation of the society. And he's thinking that nothing good is going to happen with the society. But if you look at the Marxian interpretation, what will be saying? Though we have bad times now, but in future, he's not saying that this society will perish because capitalists will ultimately take away everything. And the worker class will not be getting educated. Okay, they'll not be having skills. Ultimately, what they will do when they will not be having labor. So even it will die its own death. He's not saying that. He'll be saying that they will come and take over. And society will become more egalitarian. So when it becomes more egalitarian, they will have access to more resources. Then they will develop more. Then population will decrease. So therefore, it is a positive interpretation of how a society progresses. Whereas Malthusian is negative interpretation. Okay. Yeah. This will never transcend into this. Here, the people will become the state. Like Gram Sabha. Who takes the decisions in Gram Sabha in a village? What work has to be done by the Narega? Who decides? Gram Sabha, not Panchayat. It's not the Sarpanch or the ward member who decides. It's the people that themselves decide. For example, if they want to utilize any funds, some funds are being released to the village. Who will decide? Whether they want a school, whether they want clean drinking water, whether they want to drainage, who will decide? The people will become the government. That's why what is democracy? Democracy is of the people, by the people, for the people. Which one? It's good only, but large scale again. That's why we have representatives, right? Now let's talk about Switzerland. If any decision has to be taken in Switzerland, what happens? Nationwide voting is there. Say, for example, you want this bill or not. Nationwide voting will be done. It's called as a feature of direct democracy. What is it? Communism. Right? We have indirect democracy, where we will be sending our representative. We will decide for ourselves. Okay. Can India afford to have a direct democracy? Because when the constitutional makers, when they were making the constitution, they had this idea, they had this discussion. Can we have a direct democracy? Should we have? Is it desirable in India? No. What will happen? In order to make a decision, okay, the decision should not be arbitrary in nature. It should be an informed decision. Means the citizenry should be enlightened. Informed citizenry should be there. The citizen should be able to analyze all the pros and cons. Then they'll be able to make a decision. Okay, a sound decision. Now, looking at the levels of education in India, I don't think education is also helping people to make a sound decision, right? Okay, education is becoming you're highly educated people also. You go and ask them, about certain, opinion about certain things. They will answer them very. I don't know what's wrong with them. Not that way. Because their decisions are all driven by like personal biases also, right? So nobody can make a sound decision. Okay. So a rational decision never exists. Okay. We'll be talking about rational economic man also here. Okay. In various models. Okay. You can't be completely rational all the time. Okay. The man is always social man, driven by emotions, driven by family sentiments, driven by religious sentiments, driven by attachments. Okay. If it has to be rational, then you have to forget all these things, which can't happen. So that's what we do. We have a representative democracy. And in that representative democracy, okay, they are being aided by the bureaucracy. But bureaucracy is rational. The civil services is rational. They're supposed to be rational. So they're supposed to give the aid and advice to the ministers, okay, without any fear. That's why we have Article 310 and Article 311 in the Constitution. So whatever decision, whatever opinion you may give, the minister or the executive can never remove you. Means only president has the power to remove you, nobody else. So such kind of like job security is given to the civil servant. But despite giving that such kind of a security, but still, do they give that honest opinion, like a rational opinion about the policies? Ultimately, what they become? Yes, minister. Whatever the minister says, they'll saying, yes, sir, you are very right, sir. Okay. What an idea, sir, Jay. Right? Understand? Yeah. Hello. Now let's see the criticism. Now we talked about the goody things about it. Criticism. Now, according to the Marx, and I'll be using the map here. So according to Marx, which societies will be having higher population and which societies will be having lower population? According to Marx. Talked in terms of capitalist societies and communist socialist societies. Population and the communist socialists should be having. Look in the world today. So where do you have high population or high population growth rates? China, communist. India, like trying to be socialist, right? I don't know what exactly. And most of the countries over here are either they're in the right, left center of the spectrum. They'll be leaning towards the left. Now, why most of the newly independent countries are leaning towards the left? Right? Because after the decolonization, so till 1950s, they are under the clutches of the Europe, and European society was capitalistic. Okay, and these have become newly independent. They did not know which ideology to adapt to. So obviously, do you think they'll be part of the same society which has subjugated them? No. And moreover, these countries are poor at the time of the independence. Now also they are. So to which kind of the ideas they'll be attracted to? Yeah, socialist ideas, communist ideas they'll be attracted to. So that's why they have become left-leaning. Okay, so they'll be having all radical ideology. So that's why if you look at our freedom fighters also, most of our freedom fighters, except Gandhiji, I would say, Subhash Chandra Bose, hardcore leftists, right? Like this Bhagat Singh, right? So his party was called as Hindustan Republic Association. Later on, he has added it was socialist. Okay, in his party. So most of them, okay, are either socialist or communist in nature. So if you look at all these countries, most of them are socialist and communist, in which you have high population and high population growth rate also. And the so-called the capitalist countries have low population growth rate. Again, Marx is wrong here. This is criticism, right?
But how is capitalism affect?
See, firstly, it does not have any modes of production, right? It's thriving on tourism, banking, service sector, right? See, we can't yet comment on this kind of economies because the kind of economic order, okay, a kind of modes of production which is happening in these countries now, but we can't put them in any of the classical boxes. We can't. But again, they have a king. Okay, the king is the owner of everything. The king himself is the state and government, right? So they own most of the resources. King is equal to the state, and state is equal to the people. It's complex.
All of it really via meeting just that what branding
It's not just what is shown, but you should also comment on what is there. Yeah. For example, you take the Indian society, okay, or Indian economy. It appears to be socialist, but look at the social sector spending and other things. It is more capitalist in nature. China, it's like a coconut. Coconut, you see, from outside it's very hard, inside it's like mulayam, soft. But China is a log like. From the outside, it appears like hardcore communist country. From inside, it's all capitalism, state-led capitalism. Like, take the Scandinavian countries here. The kind of the welfare you have here, you love it. Everything is free there. Right? Huh? Yeah, obviously. But even if you're migrating there, you get a lot of benefits. Nowadays, what they're doing, to encourage the population. Okay. If you're, like if you're giving birth to a child, the child will be getting a lot of benefits. Even if you're a migrant. Okay. Recently, you must have seen one movie. Which one is that? In which Rani Mukherjee is there. Chatterjee versus the state. Okay. They come into, okay, even if you're an immigrant, they come into your house, then they see how you're taking care of your baby, how you're feeding the baby. So to that level, to that microscopic level, the state is taking care of you. In India, okay, the state of the children, right? I know. According to Marx, okay, a capitalist society should have a larger population, and higher incidences of poverty. But this is not always so. But this is not always true. Example, the industrial economies like the US, Canada, or Germany have done better in controlling the numbers, and also ensured better labor rights. And they have lowest incidences of poverty. And some countries also have negative population growth rates. Negative population growth rates. Change the para. Whereas the so-called, I'm using the word so-called, or you can use quote unquote. Okay, so-called socialist and communist countries or societies, socialist and communist countries oblique societies have high incidences of population, high incidences of population and poverty. Poverty. So this is the criticism against the Marx. But if I'm asking you today, okay, like if you're applying this theory to any part of the world, okay, or your theory to any part of the world, like how can you reduce the population in India or any developing part or in Africa? Since you've already read the demographic transition theory, how will it reduce the population? By education and health. Means more you are poor, the population will be more. Okay. So here Marx is identifying the poverty as a reason for the population growth. It may not be in the same form because the society has changed since then. But the underlying cause is still poverty. So what the state should be doing now? The state should be investing more in poverty eradication. The state should be building more egalitarian society. The state should be removing the inequalities in the society. But that is when the population will also reduce. Because when you are uplifting the population out of the poverty, so they have a decent standard of living, don't you think that themselves will invest in education and health? That is when the population will be reduced, right? So Marx should be appreciated in that context, right? Though the Marxist ideology is not proven to be entirely valid on the basis of class differentiation. But Marx should be given the credit. Marx should be given the credit for appreciating the population, and its numbers as a resource in itself. Let's change the para. While addressing the human problems, the socialist principles of welfare, and the human development are valid concepts where the society's stress on addressing inequitable distribution of resources. Inequitable distribution of resources. So this is the Marxian theory and its interpretation of population. Now, what kind of questions can be asked? See, if you're dividing these theories, population theories, so here you have some social theories, and some economic theories, and you have some socio-economic theories. Okay. Now, if you're talking about demographic transition model, it's completely a social theory because it relies on the social transformation. It says that social transformation will happen and population will reduce. Okay. The Marxian theory we can categorize as economic theory because major stress is on the economic structure and the collapse of the existing economic structure of the society. Okay. Sometimes, okay. And then, if you're talking about the Malthusian theory, it's a socio-economic theory. Again, you see, you can't purely categorize them into one theory or the other, because Marxian theory sometimes becomes a socio-economic theory also, because they're also talking about the society, right? We can't strictly categorize. But the pure social theories, these are Arsene, Dumont, and J.S. Mill. They do not talk anything about the economy, anything. They just talk about the society. The pure social theory. So we'll be discussing these theories later. It's Arsene, Dumont, and J.S. Mill. We'll be talking something called as the social capillarity approach. Means, I'll tell you, a small example, how these theories work. For example, if you have achieved a better standard of living in the society, okay, now you'll be able to, give good education to your children. Okay, you'll be able to, have good food, quality food daily, right? Now, if you are producing more children, say you have 2 children, if you're giving birth to third child or the 4th child, what will happen? Now, all the children have to be given good education, good health. It will be costing more. So what will happen to the family? The family will slip back into the vicious cycle of poverty again. Okay. So this fear of falling back into the vicious cycle of poverty will force the population, or the couples not to produce more children. So they want to rise up the ladder. You know how the capillarity works? Capillary principle, right? So it works on the principle of absorption, where a liquid will be rising up, in certain medium. The social capillarity works in that fashion. So this is completely a social theory. Okay. So these theories we'll be discussing later. Write down few questions so how the questions can be asked. So they can ask a generic question. That is, discuss the social and the economic theories, social and economic theories of the population growth. population growth. Next question. Write a note on the parameter used to describe the demographic transition in the developing countries like India. So this is a bit difficult question. Okay, again, the first question also don't attempt it now only. So let's do the other theories of population also. Then afterwards you can try to attempt this question. Next question. It's a very simple question. Compare and contrast.
Sir, can you please repeat the second question?
Write a note on the parameter used to describe the demographic transition in the developing countries like India. Means basically it's an application of DTT to India. We'll do it later, okay, when the Indian geography comes. Next. Compare and contrast the Marxian theory with the Malthusian theory. Or the third question will also be asked, can also be asked in this way, that is, the Malthusian theory is more capitalistic. In nature. Whereas the Marxian theory is more welfare oriented. Comment. See, Marx, okay, he does not directly talk about the welfare. Malthus also does not directly talk about capitalism. Now, what is your interpretation? Now, question is being asked in this way. He's saying that, now what do I have to do that? So after reading the entire Malthusian theory, you have to pick up all those points where Malthus will be talking about capitalism indirectly. And here in Marxian theory, you should pick up all those points where he'll be talking about more welfare. So you have to draw an interpretation out of it, where you'll not be finding the answer directly here. Understood? So this is how the questions will be asked. Okay. Again, tomorrow we'll discuss the Malthusian theory and other social theories of population growth. Okay. So tomorrow we'll be starting the theory afresh. Okay. Any doubts you're having? Malthusian theory and other social theories. Okay. Yeah, we can put it here also. Yeah. That's why I said this is pure social. Good. See, the Marx has given the economic model, right? Has completely given the economic model. Okay. Now, if you're extrapolating this economic model, so once you have good economic development, you have good levels of income. So ultimately, you'll be investing in what? Education. Now, education is a social attribute now. So that way, it becomes socio-economic. The roots are completely economic. Here, the roots are completely social. So we can't say that, it does not have economic aspects in that. So again, he will also agree, that Nordstrand and Thompson will also agree that the social development and economic development, so that once the economic development happens, the social development will also happen. Both will go in tandem, right? Okay, but these are completely social. See you tomorrow then. Okay. We'll be studying more society. Huh? For the next 2 months now, you'll not feel that are studying geography at all. It's society, economy, all the aspects you'll be studying. They'll come later. That's the boring part. That's the more interesting part. Is human geography. Are you, getting interested or getting bored in this, that you have been doing now recently in the GS. There also you are doing here also. Okay. That one. Here you'll learn a lot of things. And in examination also you should be attempting more from this portion. So this is where you can apply all the new aspects. For example, this aspect. This you'll not find in any textbook. Okay, where this is gone. This will not find anywhere in this. Okay, this has a lot of applied aspects. So this is where you can score more marks. Because in this paper, you can have your genuine ideas, your original ideas, you can put it on the paper. And that application part of yours will be appreciated by the examiner. That is also reason why I'm taking up this part first. Okay. Other part is anyways, cliche. Anyways, most of the things, I have already dealt with. You're aware of it. If you're my student, then, you know much. Okay. Even, without, doing much, you'll be able to attempt the, paper. But look at the previous year papers, you'll be very much comfortable with the physical geography part. Okay. See you then tomorrow.